It's been another week in our world. Somewhere in our world, a trigger was pulled and a person died in a robbery. Somewhere in our world, an angry college student threw a cue ball through a television set. Somewhere in our world, a parent who was divorcing took out their anger in the murder of a child. Somewhere in our world, a terrorist strapped bombs to their own body and blew themselves up along with countless other individuals. Somewhere in our world, economic disaster finally got the best of someone, and their patience was frayed and wore thin, and they took a gun and went into the place of their employment and took human life. We live in an angry world, and when we talk about deadly sins, there probably is no sin more deadly than anger. I hope we can have a good discussion about that today, because anger is toxic, it is explosive, it's inflammatory, and it is destructive. When I think about anger, I'm reminded of a movie which on the surface doesn't seem to draw up the image of anger at all. The movie is Forrest Gump. You know the story of Forrest. He seems to go through life unflappable. He lives during some of the angriest times in American history, and yet he's this peaceful creature who goes all the way through. And yet, alongside the life of Forrest, we see the life of his childhood friend, Jenny. And Jenny experiences the world in a very different way than Forrest does. We find as Jenny's story unfolds that something is going on inside of her. She's been molested as a young girl by her father in that little Alabama community. And something begins to build inside her that turns into drug addiction, alcohol abuse, participation in violent causes, marches. We find Jenny always on the verge of some kind of explosion or eruption that's happening in the world. Finally, Jenny comes back to Alabama, and one day Jenny and Forrest are walking down the road, and there in front of them is that old house that Jenny grew up in. You remember the scene where she looks at this house. Her father is long gone, long dead and buried. And Jenny looks at this old shack that she grew up in, the site of molestation, and she stoops down and begins to pick up rocks from the middle of the road and hurl these rocks, one after the other, after the other, after the other, at this old house, until finally she collapses from sheer exhaustion. And Forrest bends down and picks her up in his arms and says that line, "Sometimes there just aren't enough rocks." Jenny's anger is an inward anger, which is one of the kinds of angers that we human beings have inside. I think it's the kind of anger that most church-going folk have. We're a little too civil and polite to have that outward expressive anger. So our inward anger is the kind of anger that bites our fingernails, that swallows our pain, that covers over things, that overeats, that sabotages things in polite kind of ways. An inward anger. It's one of the ways that human beings carry their anger for expression. One of the other ways, though, is outward anger, and you know what that looks like. That's road rage. That's putting a fist through a wall. That's cursing. It's just a violent eruption of emotions that comes out and gives somebody a piece of our mind. Fighting, brutality, abuse, anger, inward, outward. My guess is that most people who gather in congregations, you take a poll. My study has shown me that about 35% of the crowd says, I'm outwardly angry. I take my anger out. It's external. I just get it out. I let them have it. For others, that other 65% of the crowd, they say my anger is internal. But whether we take our anger inward or express it outward, it's deadly either way. I think there's a third direction that we're called to take our anger, and that is Godward. Taking this deadly anger, toxic, explosive, paralyzing, taking it to God and saying to God, what am I supposed to do with this? Because God is the only demolitions expert on the planet who has the capacity to take toxic waste, explosive material, and somehow redeem it for good in the world where we are. Anger is deadly, inward or outward, because it destroys us and then it destroys others. But when we take anger Godward, an interesting thing happens. Ours is a God who takes these injustices that were done to us, these horrible things that have bothered us, these things that steal from us, rob us. Ours is the kind of God who takes these very things, cleanses them, makes them clean, and gives them back to us as redeemed passion so that we can care about the world in which we live. I have the sneaky suspicion that most of the good done in this world of ours has been done by people whose anger has been redeemed by God, and they found in that the energy to care, and they've moved out into a world to do deeds of social justice, deeds of great mercy, deeds of heroic selflessness, deeds of sacrifice. They've gone out into the world as the champions of this world because they got good and angry about what this world does to people, first to them and then to the world around them. And they've said, this can no longer stand. Until our anger is redeemed by God, all it can do is to destroy. We're told in the Scriptures, be angry and sin not. The only way to live out the fullness of that command is to take our anger Godward and let God do with it what only God can do, and then let Him hand us back a passion that is pure and clean and purposeful. Then we move into our world, not as those who are destructive, but as those who are redemptive. Anger is a deadly sin. I hope today, in the discussion you have about anger, that you can find your way to a deep honesty about your own anger and a deep hopefulness about what God might do with it. Have a great conversation today.